Agree or not?
Yes.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
But do you like how much neurons are made up of in a human brain? Approximate. Does anyone have an idea? Any small clue? The human brain is made up of how many neurons? Do you think? I don't require a exact number, but just give it a thought.
Yes, by like
It's in billions. I think it's 2 billion.
Millions. 2 billions. Okay. Any other number, friends? Approximately. An adult human brain is made up of how many neurons? No other answers? There is no penalization or penalty for a wrong answer. I assure you. Throw some numbers, friends.
10 million.
10 million. So it is approximately around 85 billion neurons. Now think about, I'm just trying to give you a simple overview about one single biological neuron. Think about what is the power, what is the tremendous amount of knowledge, what is the tremendous amount of computation that can be storing or capable of doing the work for a network of 85 billion neurons. Wow, isn't it, friends? So this is where the humans are one of those most intelligent species that ever existed here. Okay, so let's try to understand the concept of neurons a little more, right? Now let's try to consider a cat. A cat has roughly around billion neurons. A mouse, approximately 75 million neurons. A cockroach, right, has approximately 1 million neurons. So why am I trying to talk about the numbers here? Do you see any proportionate, friends, here? What's the relation here?
The intelligence is actually said to be proportional to the number of neurons.
Very, very good, right? There is the intelligence, the tremendous amount of computation, the tremendous amount of knowledge, the tremendous amount of intelligence, right? He's been driven by the number of neurons here. Okay, you got this point, friends? So it means the intelligence of a human species can be attributed to the biological neuron on a very granular front. Agree? Is it clear about this point? So this is the same concept, right, that our scientist has used to replicate how a biological neuron works into an artificial neuron. And the networks of these particular artificial neurons together is generally called as artificial neural network. Is it clear about this? Why did I start with the biological neuron? Because this is the fundamental inspiration for someone to create an artificial neural network. So the reason your artificial neural network sometimes looks like a magic, right? Most of the complex is gone away. All you have to do is provide just input values, just configure the architecture, provide some parameter and just leave it. After a few hours, depending upon the size, depending upon your RAM capabilities, it is going to give you a very good results with a very, very powerful accuracy. But the catch here is it is a black box process. You are not pretty sure at what's happening between input and output, and the even if you try to get into the details of the mathematical operations that are happening inside the neural networks, it is very hard to interpretable, right? Very hard to understand, very hard to interpretable. And especially when you're trying to talk about which business people, you can think about their understanding. Isn't it, friends? Is everyone clear about this? What is the evolution of artificial neurons?
Yes, Dhanush.
Very good. Now, as I said, the same concept has been replicated. How artificial neurons are modeled? Artificial neural networks, it is also trying to model the relationship between a set of input values and an output values using a model which is derived from our understanding how a biological brain process or a response to a stimuli from your sensory inputs. It means a biological neuron responds to a stimuli from sensory inputs. Similarly, your artificial neural network is also understanding the relation between a set of input values and an output value. Using a model, this particular model that we are trying to learn from artificial neural networks has been inspired or derived from a biological neuron process. Are you clear about this point? Any questions here? Friends, are you clear?
Yeah, Dhanush, clear.
Very good.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So this is why artificial neurons are one of the most powerful advanced technique, and this is very crux, right? Because this acts as a foundational or the what do you call it is one of those core component when you are trying to learn deep learning. at that point of time, I'm going to revise it again because this is the fundamental and foundational concept that you need to master before you start into the world of deep learning. Because if you remember from the introduction sessions, what is deep learning? Right? It is a subset of AI where it is trying to make use of the artificial neurons to model or to solve any complex problem statement. The moment we talk about deep learning, it is all about neurons, nothing else. You might be talking about RNN, you might be talking about CNNs, you might be talking any kind of a framework or architecture in deep learning. Each and everything is been dependent on this fundamental entity called as neural networks. Okay, are clear?
Yes.
Very good. Now let's try to understand how a artificial neuron might look like. Right, this is how a biological neuron is looking like, but how does a artificial neuron might look like? Right, so I'm just trying to talk about one neuron only. Again, I'm not trying to talk about the entire neural network now, but so this is how a fundamental neuron will look like. Okay, now let's try to pay attention to it. Okay, so in an input data frame, right, you'll be always provided with some input columns. Agree? So which particular entity that you can compare here? In this particular diagram, which particular entity you can refer it to as input values?
X1, X2, X3.
Simple, x1, x2, x3. And again, for the sake of simplicity, I just drawn 3. It does not mean that it will work only on 3 input columns. Okay, friends? You always understand this way, right? So there are just x1, x2, x3. Here in this case of a simple neuron example, but the x values here represent the input values that are present in your data frame. Very good. Now, you see a node in the middle, right? Which particular entity that you can compare this to with respect to your biological neuron?
Axon.
Axon? Seriously? Without any processing?
Cell body.
I think
Cell
cell
body.
body.
Very good. Cell body is very, very important because even though you're getting a lot of signals from your dendrites, ultimately those have been sent to your cell body for processing, right? Until unless you don't get a processing, what would you generate into an output signal? Definitely there should be some core entity of your biological neuron, which is nothing but your cell body is the core entity of your biological neuron, which takes the processing. So similarly, when the artificial neuron, so the circle that you see in the middle, right? A sigma and a function, I'm going to discuss in greater detail, but it means that you're trying to do some kind of a summations and you're going to apply some kind of a functions over it. Okay. And what you're going to get is an output. What is output here?
Why?
Y value. Simple, right? What does it mean? Now understand the relation. A artificial neural network models the relationship between a set of input signals x1, x2, x3 and an output signal. What is an output signal here? The Y value. Using a model, the model that you're going to derive is nothing but your function value that you're going to get it from an individual neuron. And this particular function derivation is dependent on how a biological neuron responds to a stimuli from your sensory inputs. Is it making sense now, friends? Now, if at all, if I have to write it as an equation, can someone think through? Understand the terminology here, and can someone help me in writing an equation after this particular process? Give it a try. What am I trying
Y
to achieve? Y equal to, right?
equal
Okay,
to
then Y. Mhm.
f of sigma xn into wn.
Excellent. I couldn't get better answer than this, right? Let's always understand, right? There is an input, and how do I know whether which particular input is playing an important role on my predictions, right? So I'm just saying x1 multiplied by w1, x2 multiplied by w2, and x3 multiplied by w3. So the summation or sigma stands for the same, isn't it? Multiplication of x1 w1 together and sum up with the other input values and it along with its corresponding weightages. And finally, what am I trying to do? Once I get this summation value, I'm trying to apply a particular function which is giving you me the final output value. So the equivalent equation to represent this particular single artificial neuron is this. Clear? Is anyone able to follow this? A simple artificial neuron where I'm just trying to make use of just one neuron, but can you think that by just using one neuron, will you be able to solve any complex problem statement? Can we?
No.
No.
Definitely not, right? It is humanly impossible to just depend upon a single neuron and try to achieve the most intelligent result, right? Because we have seen in the case of biological neuron too, right? There is some kind of a correlation about the presence of neurons to the intelligence. Agree? So there is in the same case, this is how a sample artificial neuron network will look like, right? So basically it can be categorized into
Hmm.
three things: input layer, output layer, and a hidden layer. Okay, and I'm going to discuss a great detail, but a simple example, because we have been learning about only single entity, but this is how a group of neurons will be connected with each other to derive such kind of a massive computational power, and there's a massive processing capability and a massive storage capability too at the same time. Got that point? Are we clear?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good. Now, as part of a standard template, right? What kind of an applications that you can do? The moment you think about any complex problem statement, you can always think about your artificial neural network, right? What are those things? It could be speech recognition system, or maybe a handwriting recognition system.
Handwriting.
Yeah. Okay. Or it could be a self-driving cars, right? Because the moment you talk about self-driving cars, it is all about neural networks, but we generally use deep learning neural network. But as I said, artificial neural networks is the base and core thing that works for a deep neural network. So that I'm just trying to show the same. And the moment you think about video analytics, right? The computer vision things, it all gets dependent on your base neural networks only. Okay. So similarly, what are the advantages? Can someone throw one or two? What is the first thing that strikes your mind the moment you think about neural networks?
Better predictability or better intelligence.
Excellent, right? The moment I say intelligence, what is the term that I should use in case of machine learning?
Probability or confidence level.
It is all about accuracies, right? How
Oh,
accurate
accuracy,
are your
sorry.
model, right? Agree, friends? The moment, how do you evaluate the performance of a model? What is the most common metric that we use? Accuracies and errors, isn't it? So it can come under as part of the top 3 or maybe top 5 models, which will give you the most accurate for any given problem statement, right? So that's the one good point. And the second important thing is the complexity of the problem statement. So this is another thing that we know. The moment you use about voice recognitions, face recognitions, speech recognitions, video analytics, computer visions, right? All these are some of those most complex problem statements, isn't it, friends? Agree? Right? So the reason this is one of those go-to approach that you can always bank on the moment you're trying to talk about complexity in the problem statement. Okay. And some of the other good advantages is it can be used for your classification and also regression. What does it mean, friends? I can use it for classification and also regression. It means even if my output variable has 2 classes, more than 2 classes, or a infinite number of values, which is nothing but continuous values, right? I can use artificial neural network, right? It means it is in same lines with your decision tree, but much more advanced, and the kind of results that you're going to get in artificial neural network is something that you need to watch out for. Okay. Any questions here? Okay. Now, since we have too many good advantages, you can definitely think about disadvantages, isn't it?
Yes.
Like
What is that?
computational
Excellent. Computational requirement. Think about the computational requirements, right? I was just trying to talk about one mathematical equation of a single neuron. You can see a summation, you can see a artificial what called activation functions and etc. Think about when you're trying to connect hundreds and thousands of neurons together, right? Would it be a simple architecture, friends? Definitely not, right? So definitely it requires a high intensive computation system. So the reason what will happen, it will take its own sweet time to train itself. Okay, and it all depends upon the architecture. The moment you try to say, hey, I'm trying to create 15 hidden layers, each hidden layer has 20 neurons. Now think about how complex the architecture might look like. So the reason it all depends upon the topology. The topology is nothing but called as an architecture. So it all depends upon the architecture, but by design, by principle, right? Your artificial neural network requires heavy computation power and it is very slow to train. Have you agreed to this point? Right? Okay. Now, what are some of the other important non-functional requirements that I pay attention to? Friends, what is that first one thing that I always worry about, apart from accuracies?
Black box model we cannot explain to the business.
Very good, right? It is a black box model, right? Definitely, it is very, very difficult for you to explain the inner workings of each one of those layers to a non-technological persons. When it's a non-technical, non-analytical persons, right? So the reason you cannot use artificial neural network as the de facto model for all such kind of problem statements, right? In all those complex problem statements, no one will ask you for justification more, isn't it? The moment that's driving what you call a speech recognition has been done correctly, no one will be worried about how you are able to do it. But the moment you are trying to reject a particular client's loan, the moment you are trying to decrease the credit worthiness of a customer, the moment you are trying to predict something weirdly which is being sent to a legal or federal government results, right? So these are the cases where you cannot use such kind of a models because hard to understand, hard to explain, hard to interpret the results. So the reason this is resulting in a complete black box model. Agree? Is everyone clear about these points? Any questions?